Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving straight into a massive, frankly monumental macroeconomic shift. We're talking about a transformation in the global energy landscape that is accelerating way faster than anyone really saw coming. We're going to look at the hard data behind the unexpected electric vehicle revolution and how it is quietly but absolutely ruthlessly dismantling global oil demand. It's just a wild story full of falling costs, totally surprising market leaders, and massive structural changes. Let's get right into it.
You know, for well over a century, the roar of a combustion engine, that was literally the sound of progress. But today, well, that same sound is increasingly tied to the steady rhythm of your wallet emptying out. The data is telling us a completely different story now. The internal combustion engine isn't just an environmental talking point anymore. No, it's rapidly turning into an incredibly expensive, heavily depreciating economic liability for the average consumer. Let me show you exactly why.
The real economic catalyst behind all this, it boils down to one single, incredibly powerful number, -14%. In 2023 alone, the price of lithium-ion batteries dropped by 14%. That's the sharpest decline we've seen since 2018. And what this does is essentially close the cost per mile gap. It drastically lowers the total cost of ownership. Basically, it's making the electric alternative not just the eco-friendly option, but strictly speaking, the absolute most logical economic choice.
And because of that economic shift, we're rocketing toward a massive structural milestone known as peak oil. If you're not familiar, peak oil is the structural point where global demand for crude oil hits its absolute maximum before entering a terminal permanent decline. For a long time, traditional producers swore this wouldn't happen until maybe the mid-2040s. But now, major institutions like the International Energy Agency are forecasting this incredible tipping point to hit before 2030, capping out right around 102 million barrels a day.
But to really wrap our heads around why this peak is happening so incredibly soon, we just have to follow the oil. Transport is the absolute heavyweight champion here. Every single day, the world burns through about 101.7 million barrels of oil. And out of that huge number, over 60% is completely gobbled up by the transportation sector. It's simple math, really. If you disrupt transport, you disrupt the entire global oil industry, the whole shebang.
Now here's where things get really interesting. As EV adoption ramps up, the traditional fossil fuel supply chains are literally starting to fracture. The data shows that national refinery operating rates have actually dropped below 79%. And independent refineries, they're struggling even worse. This inefficiency in the old-school fossil fuel supply chain is extremely expensive. And guess who ends up paying for all that inefficiency? Yep, it gets passed straight down to us, the consumers, right at the pump.
All right, moving on to Section 1, the real oil killers. And spoiler alert, it is not the cars you think.
Because when most of us think about vehicles disrupting the oil industry, our minds instantly jump to those sleek, high-end luxury electric sedans, right? But the reality is completely different. Look at 2023. Electric passenger cars displaced a very respectable 741,000 barrels of oil a day. Impressive, for sure. But get this, 2- and 3-wheelers in emerging markets actively displaced a mind-blowing 1.1 million barrels of oil per day. They are, without a doubt, the actual frontline soldiers of global decarbonization.
So, why on earth are these tiny vehicles so unbelievably effective at killing off oil demand? Well, it comes down to three core structural reasons. First, the sheer scale is ridiculous. We're talking about a global fleet of 1.12 billion of these things. Second, rapid replacement cycles. They just don't last as long as a typical car, which means the entire fleet is turning over to electric way faster. And third, immediate price competitiveness. In massive markets like India, they are the absolute logical financial choice for the working class. They completely bypass the need for clunky government subsidies. It turns out the real EV revolution doesn't actually have fancy gull-wing doors, it has a little basket on the front.
And speaking of India, the scale of their public transit electrification is just jaw-dropping. Right now, India has set a hard target to replace 800,000 traditional diesel buses with fully electric ones by 2030. Just to put that into perspective for a second, that is roughly 1/3 of India's entire national bus fleet. The sheer volume of diesel demand that this one single initiative is going to completely erase from the market, it's staggering.
Which brings us to Section 2, defying the odds. Heavy freight goes green. Now for years, the heavy-duty trucking industry was completely written off. Everyone labeled it unelectrifiable because of the massive weight and the crazy range requirements. But check out this data coming out of China from late 2025.
pure electric heavy trucks hit an absolutely unprecedented 50% market penetration. 50%, selling over 233,000 units. And right alongside them, liquefied natural gas or LNG trucks grabbed almost 25%. Guys, this is a massive global proof of concept. The era of diesel dominance in heavy freight is officially over.
And the ripple effects of this shift? They are incredibly physical and playing out right in front of us. Because refined oil consumption is basically in terminal decline, traditional gas stations are suddenly facing total obsolescence. Over in China, roughly 110,000 gas stations are currently being forced to completely reinvent their entire business models. Just to survive, they are desperately transforming into these integrated energy service hubs that offer electricity, hydrogen, and gas right alongside their traditional fuels.
Now, a totally valid question you might be asking yourself right now is, wait, isn't all this new electricity just being generated by burning more coal? Well, according to recent analysis out of China, the answer is a resounding no. This quote says it all. The entire increase in electricity consumption in the whole society has been provided by renewable energy. That is huge. We aren't just shifting the exhaust pipe from the car to a coal plant somewhere else. The new demand is being met 100% by green energy. It is completely replacing the old fossil fuel stack.
Let's dive into Section 3, Beyond the Battery, a multi-energy future.
Look, as amazing as they are, batteries can't magically solve everything, especially when we're talking about the absolute hardest to abate sectors like global long-haul shipping or heavy chemical industries. And this is exactly where we're seeing a brand new multi-energy ecosystem start to emerge. It's not going to be a world where one single energy source dominates. Instead, green hydrogen is stepping up for heavy industry, driving the vast majority of new pilot projects. Meanwhile, green ammonia and methanol, they're rapidly becoming the new gold standard for the shipping industry. And biomass is acting as this really critical bridge for sustainable power generation. It's like a giant puzzle coming together.
So if we project all of this forward into the future, the sheer volume of disruption is honestly a little hard to fathom. Forecasts are now suggesting that by 2040, electric vehicles alone could literally erase 20 million barrels per day of oil demand. Let that sink in. That is roughly 20% of today's total global consumption, just vanishing from the market. Poof, gone.
And let's not forget why this transition actually matters to you and me on a personal level. Sure, ditching the internal combustion engine saves a ton of money day to day. And yes, this shift massively reduces our overall life cycle carbon footprint. But even more practically than that, it completely insulates our wallets from those crazy, volatile geopolitical energy shocks that cause gas prices to inexplicably spike overnight. You're just free from all that noise. Which leaves us with this final thought. We are literally witnessing a fundamental ground-up restructuring of both global energy and personal finance. The fossil fuel era is absolutely fading. So, my question to you is, how are you going to protect your wallet in this clean transport revolution? I really hope this explainer brought you some real clarity on these massive global trends we're seeing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I cannot wait to explore our next big topic with you soon.